Now, this is something I really want to talk about to be sure that everyone is cautious and stays level-headed at all times. Now, for context, I lived in the middle of nowhere in Canada. It was an old town that had quite a few abandoned buildings due to the absence of residents. Me and many friends alike were tired of the lack of entertainment options it had for us, so what we did was explore these abandoned buildings. Prior to the experience I am about to talk about, we never did find anything too crazy, nor did anything too crazy happen to us. Occasionally, we'd see a small bit of blood, like liquid, and we did see a pentagram on the ground from someone who went to us previously, but nothing too bad. Until the last time I had gone exploring abandoned buildings. Now, when I was younger, I used to go to a daycare that somehow, someway, was part mental hospital. Weird combination, I know. It was closed down due to the lack of patients and the lack of children that were at the daycare. I decided to go back there with my friends a few years ago. For context, I was 15 when this happened. Most of my friends were around the same age. When we did get there, it was rather cliche. There was fog, it was rather dark, and there was light drizzle of rain. We went to the main gate, which was padlocked shut. We decided to help each other hop over it, and made a ton of noise. We were laughing and giggling the whole time, unsuspecting of what was to come. We looked around the small place park with flashlights. Even with our somewhat powerful flashlights, our visibility was rather limited. We decided to enter the decaying building. Glass and dirt crunched under our feet as we stepped into the daycare section of the complex. There were still old Legos, wood chips from the previous furniture, old torn dolls, and toys strewn about. The further we walked around the daycare section, we naturally became more and more silent, until all we could hear was the crunch of the dirt under our feet. I found some crayons in a plastic container in the corner of the room. I walked over to them to pick them up, when all of a sudden, we heard a loud crash coming from behind a metal door leading to the psych ward part of the building. My friends and I all looked at each other. As a whole, we were a group of 5. Most of them were very bold and cocky. We all looked at each other when my friend Brian suggested we go and look to see where the sound came from. Personally, I was not fond of the idea, but with my group of friends, there was no way anyone was going to decline such a thing. We all stacked up on the door and opened it. It was rusted to the floor and we heaved to get it open. As we walked in, the metallic smells and must became stronger, with a hint of something else which I couldn't put my finger on at that moment. We walked in, our flashlights pointed in every direction with Brian leading the group. The hallways were tight and to the left, and right were the occasional metal doorway with the doors open. I felt slightly claustrophobic and it felt a little hard to breathe. As we continued, Brian shined his flashlight onto a room. We all stopped walking as Brian slowly entered the room. "What is it?" I asked him. "I thought I saw someone here. It seems all fine now." To be honest, I thought he was just messing with us to increase our anxiety, but looking back, I think he was being completely honest. He backed out of the room and we continued walking deeper and deeper into the psych ward, when another friend swiftly told us to stop. We came to a halt and all listened. In the distance ahead of us, we heard the subtle pitter-patter of footsteps echo through the hallway. We all looked at each other, fear in each of our eyes. Brian continued walking towards the sounds. We considered turning back for a second without Brian, wondering if some ghost or something was in the building. But we couldn't do that to him. The closer we got, the more I felt like I was being watched, when finally we entered a room on the right which had the smell of rotting meat. In front of us was a dead deer. Its innards were all spilled all over the floor, staining the concrete. A friend of mine had a very weak stomach and vomited all over the floor. That's when we heard whispering from somewhere. Brian shined his flashlight to the corner of the room where a man with short hair was standing with his head down. He wore a bright green t-shirt stained with what I assume was blood and torn beige pants. He did not have any socks and his feet seemed damaged. He was twitching sporadically and continued to mumble even after we saw him. We stared at him for a good, solid 30 seconds before he made his first true movement. He looked up at us with a haunting grin that sent shivers down our spine. "You guys here for a feast?" He said each word with varying infection and energy. This kicked us over the edge, and we bolted out of the room, all the way back to the daycare center. The door was still open, and we decided to try and slam it shut, but the rust and pure weight of the door almost kept it open. It took 3 of us pulling with all of our strength just to close it, and just before we did, I could still see the silhouette of a man watching us, his white teeth being the only other human feature I could see. As we sat behind the metal door, catching our breath for a second, all looking at each other for confirmation that we saw the same thing. After a little bit of labored breathing from each of us, we heard a light tapping on the door. That's when we decided it was time to leave. We booked it out of the vicinity completely and ran home. A year after we visited that spot, police went back to do a routine search of the area and found the man. It was stated that this guy used to go to the psych ward before it closed down. Supposedly, he had escaped the facility he was transferred to and lived off the wildlife around the complex. When the cops brought him in, he had a series of diseases and sickness from eating raw meat. His mental condition was much worse than before. There were future rumors that he did kill someone in the forest while searching for food, but nothing has been confirmed. In the end, guys, be careful, especially in dangerous areas such as abandoned buildings. And creepy dude, let's not meet. I am never exploring ever again.